Well, David, a very big week for Pacific Edge. How are you feeling after the pretty roller coaster 10 days?
It certainly is. It's been very much a roller coaster ride, a lot of activity, and we've been under intense spotlight in the last couple of weeks, which is great in one sense, but very wearying in another sense.
Yeah. Were you surprised at the reaction of how the market has responded to your listing?
Yes, I think we were genuinely surprised by the extent and the breadth of the run that we got off the share price. The information has been long awaited, and we knew that would have an impact, but not necessarily to the extent that it did. And it just shows the depth of desire to invest in opportunities of this nature. And you've seen it in Rod Drury's Xero, and now you're seeing it again in our technology.
This has been quite a while in the making. Of course, you don't achieve the sort of success you've achieved overnight. In fact, Pacific Edge goes back to 2001. Just briefly give us a sense of the story and the background to what it's taken to get to this point.
Sure, you did right. Anything with the word bio in it is generally on a 7 to 10 year cycle, and so that's always a challenge to get the business founded and to start that business growing. So in the first instance, there's often a catalyst. In this case, it was the death of a young girl from a disease, for a complication associated with cancer. And it really triggered the question that we should and could and need to make these tools so that we can see and find and manage cancers better. And concurrently with that, the human genome had just been sequenced. So there was a huge opportunity to take that sequencing opportunity and say, can we find genomic biomarkers that we can bolt together to make tools that have superior accuracy in finding and helping us find and manage cancers? And so when we started, there really wasn't anything known about that. There was no probability that this was going to work. And there were a number of other companies that were starting up in the US that were also trying to do this. The molecular biologists felt that this was going to be a pretty straightforward sort of a run. Great faith in the technology, and however, cancer is very heterogeneous, and finding those biomarkers was not straightforward. So the company set about a really structured approach. We had a lot of clinical advisors and oncologists and clinicians, and that set us apart from other organisations that were just being driven by these gene jockeys who are keen to just do the mining. And the careful segregation of the tumours, putting people in the hospitals that take the tumours straight off the surgeon's knife, making sure there's no degradation of sample, gave us the opportunity to get the discovery events that others weren't getting. So we spent 3 years building this gene expression database where we compared gene expression from normal cells to those from the tumour, and looking for the genes that were either upregulated or overexpressed versus those that were not overexpressed. The outcome being that we'd find some biomarkers that we could bolt together. So we started patenting when we had something like 2,000 biomarkers, genes that were overexpressed for any one cancer, and then we'd whittle that down progressively and start locking in on the differences and features. A lot of science, a lot of different technologies, and a lot of techniques, and we built a customised array inside the organisation. And we went to an organisation in Germany, a company called MWG, and we were the first commercial company in the world to go to this organisation and start using these synthetic pieces of genes, these oligonucleotides. And we ordered a bunch of these and set about systematically mining 5 cancers and building this gene expression database. So that database is the cornerstone asset. After 3 years, we shut that off and said, right, let's go into this database and see if we can pull out some U-Butte prototypes. And so we went in and got some pretty sharp-looking prototypes. They're rough, but looked very, very promising. And the original business plan was all about doing great discovery, harnessing all this scientific horsepower with some great founders, one of whom had come across into the organisation, and that was Parry Guilford, and he was our Chief Scientific Officer. Parry had made some major milestones in gastric cancer with his E-cadherin gene discovery, which had a huge and profound impact on the McLeod family here in New Zealand, and it often comes back into discussion in New Zealand. It's lauded around the world as being one of the great discoveries that have come off the genome sequencing background. So we had a real hotshot who was leading the charge in the scientific field. And the plan was to take these prototypes, go to the big blue chip diagnostic companies like Roche and Bayer and license it to them and let them take it to market, because hey, this is what these big companies do. So we went to see Roche and in the United States, and they said, wow, great science, fantastic. We don't really do this stuff to this degree. How about you guys keep going? And then when you knock off some more risk and you've polished this thing up a little bit more, we'll buy it off you and we'll take it to market. And so we went back to the board, to the shareholders, and we said, well, hey, the next step isn't that big. We'll inject some more cash and we'll do the science ourselves and we'll step it up. And bit by bit, you know, we kept getting the news and we kept dragging this thing all the way up to, you know, up to the point of doing a clinical study. And by that stage, you're that close to the market that you might as well do the rest of it yourself. So we've dragged these guys who are first-class discovery scientists right through this whole commercialization cycle, from discovery of prototypes to validating the prototypes to setting up the clinical studies to you know, getting that outcome, writing the science, peer-reviewed science papers, and then doing all the standard operating procedures and doing all the clear regulatory approvals and building a lab in the United States, designing it and then building it and bolting in the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And so these guys have got a huge bandwidth, and that capability is locked into our organisation now. And you know, we feel very comfortable about taking biomarkers that others have discovered and bringing them to bear either with some of ours or on their own, and making these products because we know how to do this.
So you haven't had any calls from Roche saying what happened to the call to us?
Yeah, it was funny. We came back to, and this is why we ended up with bladder cancer. Parry Guilford and I went to see the managing director of Asia Pacific, a well-known gentleman by the name of Graham Watt, and Graham at the time said, well, that's great, fantastic science, and we'd heard this all before, and we were about to walk out the door, and Graham said, you don't have anything that will run on our Roche Light Cycler 480, do you? And that's their oligonucleotide platform for amplification of genes. And we kind of naturally said, of course, and scuttled back to the lab and had a look to see whether or not this was going to be possible. And at the time, RNA, which is the intermediary product between the DNA and the development of the protein, was thought to be very labile, and we knew that it had a very short half cycle, and you could damage it easily, and therefore you start to lose the fingerprint. So we came back, and Parry had a good look, and we found that these biomarkers at an RNA level were very, very discriminatory. So we locked in on them, and then we felt that we had to build some supplementary technology, which was this buffer to stop this stuff from degrading. So we built the buffer, and then we built a U-Butte sampling system that was going to carry this buffer to get the urine samples back to the lab. And before long, you know, we had generated this whole end-to-end cycle of technology. And now today, it's pretty cute because we have an algorithm that takes the information, the gene expression information for the 5 biomarkers, runs it through an algorithm and comes up with a single digit. It's the probability that you have bladder cancer. We also have this buffer that is in the tube. It's an evacuated tube. This is a really cute design. And without the buffer, the technology won't work. It's got to be this buffer for this algorithm to work. So now we have 2 pieces of U-Butte technology, and the third piece we have are the patents associated with the relationship between the disease and the biomarkers.
So just explain, perhaps too, for those without the medical knowledge about the significance of what this new CX bladder product will do that couldn't be done previously.
Right. I mean, you have to go back to the clinical understanding of what happens with people when they present with symptoms of bladder cancer. And these symptoms are blood in the urine. It's called hematuria. There's macro or visible blood in the urine, and there's microhematuria. And these patients, by deed of clinical guidelines, because of the probability that they have cancer, they all need a full urological workup. And most of those spin off the gold standard, which is known as cystoscopy. And it's a black rubber tube, and it goes up your urethra and it scopes the bladder. It's expensive and it's invasive. And it does miss tumours. And so because of that, the urologists often bolt together a whole bunch of tools. So there can be cystoscopy and cytology as an adjunct. They can have ultrasound, they can have CT scans, and those combined have a huge complementary cost to understanding whether or not this person's got bladder cancer. So our technology is very, very cute, very sharp, very accurate. You pee in the pottle, put the tube into the pottle, it is vacuum loaded, it draws up a sample, send it to our lab, we check for gene expression of these 5 biomarkers, and we can quantitatively tell you how many of those genes are being expressed and therefore the probability that you have cancer.
And that's a much simpler process than was able to happen previously.
Yes, simpler, cheaper, smarter, more accurate. And particularly important for patients with bladder cancer is that it's a highly recurrent disease. So 70% of those tumours recur after they've been treated, and 30% of those that recur progress. So it's not a nice disease. And from the time you're diagnosed with it, you're put onto this very long monitoring program, which involves a lot of cystoscopies. And those cystoscopies are expensive and invasive. So you have a compliance problem because nobody wants these things. And of course, the urologists need them in order to understand and manage the disease. So a technology like ours that comes along that's non-invasive, cost-effective, and at the pointy end of accuracy is exactly what you want.
So give us a sense too of the R&D that's gone into all of this, and the sort of money that you've had to invest to get to this particular point.
Right. Well, that's a good question. You know, prior to raising $20 million in 2011, we'd invested approximately $18 million. And so, you know, you're now looking at about $38 million, and we're just on the cusp of raising another 20. So we've had a very small team of people. We've been highly focused, and this program has been working on 5 cancers that we started with, but quickly migrated to having the lion's share of our program focused on the commercialization of bladder cancer. So now we're very much a urothelial shop. We look at tumours that are epithelial tumours from the bladder all the way to the kidney, and anything that voids to the urine. And why? Simply because there's much better value for the company if we can take another product down the same pipe to the same customer. It's a captured customer. And so it increases the stickiness of our products, it increases our brand, and it provides them with a bunch of tools that gives them a greater perception and of the challenges that are going on in any one clinical outcome.
The aspect too of capital has been an interesting one, because how have you funded all of this to this particular point?
Well, that's another good question. You know, and people often ask, you know, would you do that differently? And I don't think you ever get that opportunity, so it's kind of a moot point. But the company was kind of an ugly duckling in that we were forced, you know, by deed of lack of capital, to list very early on. And so 1 year after we were born, we listed. And that's not uncommon for companies in Australasia. It's less common in the US, although now, interestingly enough, starting to be prevalent in the US as well. And so we listed on the New Zealand main exchange because there wasn't a secondary exchange at that time. So NZSX listed, and we had a very small, tight holding of shareholders, and they're very loyal people. And without those people, we just wouldn't be here today. I mean, they've bought the vision, they understood the progress, and we've kept them well appraised of that. And they've continued to dig into their pockets whenever we've needed the cash. We've kept a lean, mean machine. We've hit our milestones, we've done some great discovery, we've built some nice prototypes, and now we have a product in the market. Next year we'll have 2 more products in the market. And so it's a great opportunity. It's been a great journey for them, albeit somewhat longer than they may have thought, and certainly that we thought as well. But it's been fantastic.
Also, when you think of the relationship with the medical school, one assumes there's been a fairly tight relationship with the University of Otago through all of this.
Yes, you know, there has been right from day one. The university saw us as an opportunity and a pipe to take all things cancer genetics related to the market. And so we have what we call a legacy agreement with the university that sees the cancer genetics research come to Pacific Edge. And we are able to help with the development of that in the later stages. And because of that, we have a very strong relationship. And Parry Guilford, our CSO, spends a lot of time driving the cancer genetics laboratory inside the university. And we are able to take those discoveries and bring them into the company. A lot of the discoveries that we work on right now have come out of the company itself, even right from the get-go. You know, we brought the skills of the people in, but we didn't bring any intellectual property in necessarily. We brought in some information around fuzzy logic and neural networks that we thought were going to help us. We didn't end up using them to any great degree in our product development, but a great co-location capability, and it's a lovely place to work. Some very nice people to operate with.
What have you learned through all of this that you would pass on to other businesses that would want to follow in your slipstream? Because clearly you'd be wanting to see others see you as a leader in this, and have others follow in behind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you've got to look to the macro environment, and if you can find partners to stay with you, that's great. Keep a very sharp eye on the vision. Make sure you continue to communicate that vision, and everybody's a stakeholder, so you spend a lot of your time communicating. You got to wake up every day. You got to keep running, and you got to burn a lot of energy, because it's just a huge amount of energy that you can pour onto the ground. Get some good advice. If you're in the field of clinical work, make sure you drive those clinical decisions from day one with clinicians. So that's what we did. We went out and asked them, what would we need to do if we're going to make a difference to the way you do your work? What single thing can we change for you?
Which is solving their problem, basically.
Correct, yeah. And so this wasn't just a bunch of scientists who got together and said, let's play with some genes and let's see what we can do. This was all about understanding what the clinicians need to endure, and where their problems occur.
And obviously working closely with them as well.
Yes, and we still do. So we have a scientific advisory board. It's part of, our founders sit in there. We have grown that to include other people who have technological backgrounds as well as clinical backgrounds and scientific backgrounds. And then we have now, when we have a product, we have a clinical advisory board. So these are hotshots. These are KOLs that globally located, who advise on the way we bring this to bear in the market, how we sharpen the end of the pencil.
How important is it that there are other products coming along behind in the pipeline?
I think that's very, very important. You've got to ensure that you can grow a robust portfolio of products. If you're just dependent on one product, there's an inherent risk for the investors. But more importantly, when you get in the market, you want to be able to have a one-stop shop. We see that as very important in our company, that the urologist can dock to us, and it's not just a one-off. You water down any competitive risk, because, for example, if you had somebody come in a competitive stream who had a detection technology, fantastic. It may be competitive, it may not, but they certainly wouldn't have a prediction technology, and they wouldn't have a triaging technology. And so the further you can gap yourself by building this portfolio of products, very important.
What sort of targets have you set yourself over the next couple of years?
We've got some pretty robust revenue earning targets, and also getting these products into the market. So next year, for example, we're targeting 2 new products to market, and we've targeted, set ourselves a reach target of $100 million of gross revenue per annum by the end of our 5th year of trading. So we've modelled this environment a lot. There's no precedent for this. We don't know what the trajectory is. We don't know what the penetration curve looks like from the get-go to the market, but we have an inherent sense that we can get to this 100 million. Our modelling shows us that we should get there.
And what happens if one of the large pharmaceuticals comes knocking at your door wanting to take you out?
Yeah, we've had that already, and we managed to get away with the skin of our teeth. But that's very much a very real opportunity. We'd see it as an opportunity, and we'd position that for our shareholders, for them to decide how best to take that up. And so long as everything that we do is all about putting meat on the bone, the more revenue we can generate, the more products we have in the market, the more meat there is for these guys to have to value up and pay for, and the better off the shareholders are going to be.
But your shareholding structure is such that you've got nobody that's going to be pressing you for an exit.
No, that's another great thing. We don't have venture capital investment, and of course those guys often referred to as vulture capitalists, and other things, and they do strange things to you around the back of the bike shed. But we all understand that those guys need an exit, and they like big multiples of their original investment, and they want it out within 2 to 3 years. So that's a fast turn for anybody, and it's tough work. We've been very, very fortunate to have this private equity money in at the start, and we kind of think about ourselves as being more of a family company. And these people, we've come to know them very well, because we don't have hundreds of thousands of shareholders. So we're kind of more like a private company in drag than a public company.
And just finally, David, how do you feel personally at this particular point? I mean, it must be very satisfying to take a business to the point at which you now see it.
Yeah, it's very satisfying, and in a lot of ways very humbling. We have a great team of people, and it's been a long haul, but it's a great honour to be able to take this forward and see some of the promises we've made to the investors to come to fruition. It's been great.